The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, a pale golden ocean under a white-hot sky. There were no roads, no landmarks, no signs of life, just sand, heat, and silence. For miles, the only movement was the shimmering distortion of heat rising from the dunes. A convoy of 4 people had entered this forgotten part of the Sahara 3 days ago. They were researchers, archaeologists, to be exact, drawn in by rumors of a lost ruin buried deep beneath the dunes, a city said to predate recorded history. It had no name. No official mention in any text. Only fragments from oral Bedouin legend. But that was enough for them. Enough to justify the risk. Dr. Lena Morvant, the expedition leader, had read every scrap of lore she could find. She was methodical, rational, hardened by years of work in the most brutal environments on Earth. But this place unsettled even her. Something felt wrong, not dangerous in a physical sense, but off. The sun didn't seem to rise and fall in the usual rhythm. The wind carried no sound. And the sand shifted, ever so subtly, as if breathing. The rest of the team didn't seem to notice. Tom, the gruff geologist, was preoccupied with mapping the terrain. Samira, the desert guide, kept mostly to herself, whispering old prayers when she thought no one was listening. And Anthony, the eager grad student, was too busy trying to impress Lena to care. They made camp near the largest dune in the area, an unnatural rise in the land that stood like a mountain of gold against the otherwise smooth landscape. Locals had called it Al-Qabr, the grave, and avoided it at all costs. But Lena believed it was the key to everything. The maps, the satellite scans, they all pointed here. On the 3rd night, as the wind died and the moon hung low and blood-colored in the sky, they began their first dig. They should never have touched the sand that it didn't take long. The sand was loose and dry, and within a few hours, their tools struck something solid, stone. Carved, patterned stone, covered in a faint spiral motif that seemed to draw the eye. Anthony was the first to uncover what he thought was a stairwell. He called the others over, triumphant. The entrance was deeper than expected, narrow steps leading down into blackness, choked with dust and silence. It smelled like rotten time. Lena's flashlight beam caught strange symbols etched into the walls, but they were unlike any script she had seen before, organic, almost pulsing. "We should mark the entrance and return in the morning," Samira said quietly. But Lena was already descending. Inside, the air was wrong. Thick. Heavy. The temperature dropped sharply, and their lights began to flicker. The walls were closer than they should have been. They pressed inward. Breathing. The stairs ended in a vast chamber filled with pillars and sand-covered stone. In the center stood a black monolith, smooth and tall, humming softly with a frequency none of them could hear but all of them felt. Like something was inside them now, vibrating. Tom stepped forward to touch it. And the chamber screamed. "Shall I continue with part 3? Let me know if you'd like longer parts or visual breaks between sections. We're building toward a slow, terrifying descent into madness, isolation, and something buried deeper than anyone expected. That it wasn't a sound in the air, not one that echoed or bounced from the stone. It was inside their heads. A shrill, piercing scream that made Lena drop her flashlight and fall to her knees, clutching her ears. Tom staggered backward, blood trickling from his nose. Samira gasped and muttered something in Arabic, her lips trembling, her fingers twitching in a frantic symbol of protection. Anthony froze, eyes wide, staring at the monolith like it had spoken to him. Then, silence. The screaming stopped as quickly as it began. Their flashlights flickered back on, one by one, as if someone had allowed it. The monolith remained still and silent, standing in the center of the chamber like it had been waiting. Lena's heart pounded. Her fingers shook. She had felt something, not sound, not vibration. It had been thought. Not her own. What was that? Tom muttered hoarsely, wiping at the blood on his lip. No one answered. No one could. They left the chamber slowly, climbing the narrow steps without speaking, emerging into the cold night air like they'd been underwater and only now remembered how to breathe. The stars above had shifted. It was impossible to tell the time. Back at the camp, Samira refused to eat. She sat apart from the others, eyes always scanning the dunes, ears straining as if waiting for footsteps that never came. That night, as Lena tried to sleep, she heard a sound coming from the sands just outside her tent. Whispers. Thousands of them, low and crawling, too soft to understand but impossible to ignore. The sound of countless voices, beneath the sand. The next day, Anthony didn't wake up. He was alive. Breathing. But he didn't respond. His eyes were open, wide and staring at the roof of his tent. When Lena tried to speak to him, he just smiled. Not a happy smile. A too wide one. His eyes didn't blink. He was down there too long, Samira whispered. They touched his mind. Lena wanted to shout at her. To demand answers. But she didn't. Because she had dreamed last night. And in that dream, she had seen a stairwell that went far deeper than the chamber. Endless. Spiraling. And something waited at the bottom. Something with no face. Something with eyes all over its skin. Tom wanted to leave. He packed his gear. Started the jeep. But when he drove off across the sand, the horizon never changed. The dunes repeated. After 3 hours of driving in a straight line, he returned to the exact same place he'd started. The desert won't let us go, Samira said. That night, Lena dreamed again. Only this time, she wasn't asleep. The sand began to move on its own. Tiny tremors in the night. Faint trembles beneath their tents, like something vast and crawling beneath the surface. Anthony was still catatonic. His skin had turned pale, almost translucent. Veins darkened like ink beneath his skin. He whispered now, just fragments, nonsense phrases. The mouth is opening. The roots go deep. We are already inside it. Tom snapped. He took a shovel and tried to bury the monolith entrance. He screamed that they had to seal it. That it was a door, not a monument. That something was waking up. He never finished. The sand opened beneath him like water. It swallowed him in seconds. Lena and Samira stood frozen as he sank, not screaming, just gone. The hole closed. Flat. Smooth. As if he'd never existed. Lena didn't sleep anymore. She barely ate. Her journals turned into scrawls. Symbols she didn't remember writing. Circles within circles. Eyes. Spirals. Mouths. Anthony's body began to twist. Joints popping. Bones shifting under his skin. He laughed without sound. At night, Lena saw his silhouette standing far from the tents, staring into the dark. But he was always back in his cot come morning. And still, the sand whispered. One night, Lena and Samira descended the stairs again. There was no discussion. No plan. Only the pull. The monolith pulsed now, faintly glowing. And behind it, an opening. They entered it. The opening behind the monolith led to a narrow passage, carved not by human hands but by something ancient and wrong. The walls were moist, the stones slick with a black sheen that shimmered in their flashlight beams. The air was cold now, impossibly cold for the desert, and filled with the scent of earth long sealed away. Lena and Samira moved in silence. Words felt useless. Heavy. The passage spiraled downward. Not in any natural architecture, no straight lines, no symmetry. It curved like intestines, narrowing in places where they had to squeeze, then widening into impossible chambers that defied geometry. Gravity shifted subtly. Their stomachs turned. Sometimes they felt like they were climbing sideways. Or falling without moving. Symbols covered the walls. Older than writing. Alive. Lena didn't read them, they read her. She felt thoughts that weren't hers. Memories that bled into her own. A sea of blackness. A sky made of mouths. A being sleeping beneath all things, dreaming in hunger. When they entered the final chamber, it was alive. The walls pulsed. Veins of glowing red light throbbed through the stone. The floor was soft, spongy, warm beneath their boots. At the center stood a pit, bottomless. It inhaled, slowly, pulling at them with each breath. The source. Lena stared down into it. And it stared back. She never remembered jumping. Just falling. Down. Down. Past time, past sound, past light. The world above became meaningless. Her body didn't fall. It unraveled. Each layer peeled back. Memory. Language. Identity. Until only fear remained. And even that was stripped away. Then. Stillness. She stood in a void. Endless black. But in that void was an eye. Larger than thought. Made not of flesh, but of concept. A divine, awful awareness. It didn't see her with sight. It knew her. It had always known her. She felt her childhood. Her fears. Her sins. Her dreams. It tasted them. Savored them. She was nothing. A flicker. A tickle in the back of its mind. She spoke, but not with words. A plea. A question. A scream. The eye answered. Not in language, but in understanding. You are already inside. You were never outside. There is no desert. There is only me. Lena woke up. Back in the tent. Sweating, shaking, covered in fine black dust. Anthony was gone. Samira was gone. The sun never rose. The sand had turned dark. Red. The sky swirled in impossible colors. The wind whispered in voices she recognized, her own. Tom's. Samira's. Her mother's. Her childhood dog. She wandered. For hours. Or days. Time was broken. The ruins had vanished. The monolith was gone. Only dunes remained. But the sand moved now. It breathed. And beneath it, it waited. She could not die. Not here. This was its temple. And now, she was its priestess, years past. Or none. Lena walked the desert endlessly. She found others, travelers, wanderers, explorers, and led them to the place. To the stairs. The whispering mouth. They never returned. But she remained. She aged, but never died. Her skin grew thin. Her eyes darkened. Her thoughts weren't hers anymore. She dreamed in spirals. And at last, the mouth beneath the desert opened fully. It didn't roar. It breathed. A long, slow, hungry breath. From the sands rose black tendrils. Pillars of bone and ash. The desert split apart. Swallowed sky and sun and stars. And the eye opened once more. No one found Lena's team. No one ever will. Satellite images show a blank zone where the expedition vanished. No landmarks. No anomalies. Just sand. Endless and still. But listen closely. On some nights, when the wind is just right, whispers echo across the dunes. A woman's voice. Calling you by name.